Lattice Developer Conference. Dan, give us the highlights, baby.
So first of all, Pat, you and I had the chance to come in early and spend some time with their new CEO, Ford Tamer. Really good guy. We did mention, I think, around their earnings that we had the chance, but this was the first in-person sit down. And in the spirit of our partnership, this is probably what the third we've shown up for their developer conference. Had a sit down with the executive leadership team, some new leadership in the team. And Pat, let me say that first and foremost, I mean, this is a company that's really been priding itself on moving up the stack. So they were always one of the leaders. I think they said something like on their Nexus, which is their low end FPGA. What did they say? Like 250 million units shipped every year.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I mean, the volume on this is tremendous. A couple stats about the event. They doubled their number of demos this year. They saw huge growth in the actual customer base. And so while FPGAs don't necessarily always get the attribution of being like a cool AI play, in every one of these designs, whether it's these big servers that we talk about, whether it's the next generation AI PCs, FPGAs are very commonly used for things like increasing performance, boot reduction of security risks in high volume reboot, and optimizing things like sensor technologies, like over the shoulder, hacking that takes place. The chips that are used to sense that stuff is technology like Lattice. So the company, has really been focused. They really went from no developer ecosystem to a sizable developer ecosystem inside of like 3 or 4 years. I think they had 6,000 developers sign up for this conference, Pat. And like I said, huge number of demos, partners like NVIDIA. I think last year they had Meta, but it's across industries, automotive, data center servers, handsets and PCs. They're playing in really all the spaces. And by the way, Pat, this is another company that saw a really hard pivot away from sort of some of its core revenue areas in industrial, comms, consumer, and has had to really make our pivot into areas like data center servers and AI to stay relevant and growing. They have had several kind of what I'd say slow down quarters. And so the question is, how do they continue to make this pivot, continue to turn the corner? But Pat, my take, and by the way, everybody check out all the videos. We posted a few demonstrations. We've got the executive leadership conversations, is they continue to be a leader in their space, leader in low power, a leader in efficiency. And really, Pat, as the big FPGA companies have either been kind of swallowed inside of bigger chip companies or they've been kind of spun off from bigger chip companies, Lattice has been very disciplined. And I do think as the market starts to turn, they're in a really good position for growth. So I'll pause there and I'll kick this one to you to see if you have anything to add to it.
Yeah, so Lattice is the company that makes FPGAs sexy and more programmable. Working at AMD as long as I did, I was very familiar with FPGAs. In fact, we had a high performance FPGA version of Opteron so we could do testing before we hardened the silicon, and a lot of customers use that today. But FPGAs have really shifted, and one of the biggest challenges used to be their programmability. But Lattice has come along and added a bunch of solution stacks to those, which makes it easier. And while they are less power efficient than an ASIC, you can get time to market probably a year and a half sooner. And many of Lattice's FPGAs actually have hardened silicon in there. So they're removing a lot of these objections here. And by the way, the stock ripped. Stock was up 7%. Dan, when's the last time that we've seen a stock rip after a developer conference? Like, I don't remember the last time. 10 or 15 years ago, it's the way that it worked, but it no longer happens like this. So yeah. Why did it rip? Lowest, in fact, they were the highest of any semiconductor player on the day after of any company. From a percentage standpoint, they brought out a new low power Nexus 2 line. They expanded Avant with the 30 and 50 line. They updated and improved 4 solution stacks, and had a much larger ecosystem at the event than they had before. And they had on-stage appearances from Dell, Microsoft, Teledyne FLIR, and a company that, unless you operate on the edge, you've never heard of. It's called SICK. That's a company that makes sensors, and it's the name of the founder's last name. The thing that probably got the markets interested, to me, is the reality of Avant, is these customers getting up there and talking about Avant. And I just think net that helped. So looking forward to tracking the company, getting to know CEO Ford Tamer, and of course, love spending time with Isam, who is the Chief Strategy Officer and also heads marketing.